Hello.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Welcome to the first of our new Thursday night sessions of Pop Culture SquadCast.
I'm confused. I mean, right now this is fine. This is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to talking with Joe. But when we're done, I'm going to have to keep on reminding myself, no, it's Thursday. One of all the assistants I've ever had in the last 35 years, I told them their first priority was to make sure I always knew what day of the week it was. Oh, I don't hear you. Okay, there's a finger going up. Bob is saying stuff. And for some reason, I can't hear him. Okay, another finger up.
We're good. We're back.
Okay.
I was getting some double sounds, and that's not good. So we're good. We're ready to go.
You understand that with my background in broadcast radio from thousands of years ago.
Yes.
Dead air is the worst thing in the world.
I know, it's killing me. I apologize to everyone out there who's listening.
Well, it happens to all of us here because these tubes and whistles and chips and stuff don't work.
Well, we're going to be good tonight. We're ready to go. We have a great show tonight. We have a fantastic guest who will be here shortly. Joe Illidge is going to be on the show tonight with us. We're going to talk about the Kickstarter that he's involved with, that we're very excited about, called Epiphany Engine. But we are back and we are in full swing. So we had a show on Tuesday night. So please, everyone, go check that out. Right now, I'm going to tell you right now, make sure you subscribe to where you are watching this. So you will know when we come live, which is going to be every Tuesday for the foreseeable future and some Thursdays.
But not every Thursday, because
not every Sunday.
We have a tendency to like go away to conventions.
And travel on Thursdays is a big deal.
Yeah.
So, but if we have time and we have the availability and we can get somebody in, we're definitely going to do that for you. I have I booked a couple of new guests today, so our schedule is continuing to fill up.
I only know of one of them, but I'm very excited.
Yes. Well, yeah, we will get to that. I think we're not going to say that today. We'll save that. There's another one though that is booked for the following week, or the week, not next week, but the week after. We have a guest booked for that. Did you read X-Men #1?
Yes, I did.
So this is a new beginning. It actually says that from the ashes, a new beginning.
Right.
I liked it. So I have followed the last 3 restarts of the X-Men. This included the third, right? So very specifically. So there was the whole Hickman thing, which is what has just ended, and now we're in a new era with a bunch of different people. And before that, there was a time when the death of X had happened, and the Marvel had decided that the Inhumans show was so terrible that they needed to move back to the X-Men. So they re-brought them back for a little bit. Matt Rosenberg was writing it. There was a bunch of good stuff. Of those, this is a good start. It's not the game-changing, earth-shattering Hickman Powers of X and House of X event, but I liked it. What did you think? And you don't have that experience. So
no, I do not. I have not followed a regular X-Men title. I mean, I've read individual things, but a regular X-Men title for the entire 21st century. This is not because I don't like the X-Men. it's because there's only so much time to read comics. I have no idea how you do it, because you read twice as many as I do. But there's only so much time, and you got to cut back here and there. So I dumped the X-Men because they were confusing, and there's 43 million members of the X-Men. So it took me a little while reading this one to understand exactly who everybody was, because there's a couple of characters there that I only knew at best in passing.
Sure.
Although the other characters, the more established characters, didn't seem to change very much. So, I enjoyed it. It was a nice, solid Marvel comic. It did not, it's a classic Marvel comic type story, and that's cool. It's really nice to see that, and because it's a beginning, you don't think, you're not jumping in the middle of this ocean. I mean, the X-Men is an ocean. So I enjoyed it. Obviously, the story really hasn't developed. It's just the first issue. Looking forward to Gail's, because I'm a fan of hers. So there's the fanboy reaction.
Absolutely.
And also, I like the characters in that one, but I'm not certain as to who's in which, and I'm not certain really in the long run if that's going to matter. But they're doing a Namor book, so I'm happy about that. I like that.
That Namor book looks really good.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters, and I think arguably one of the two most unique characters of the Golden Age. Now, that's probably bullshit, but the Human Torch and Submariner were like characters we'd never seen before, whereas Superman was very much in the science fiction ilk, and Batman in the shadow pulp ilk. And the Blackhawks were fascists, but those two characters I thought were just amazing. And the crossovers, which nobody had done at that point in time. I mean, every once in a while somebody sort of acknowledged somebody else was alive, but the Submariner Human Torch crossovers in the early 40s, late 30s. If you get a chance, if you're at a convention, and you see reprints of them, and you can afford it, and without having to take a second mortgage on your house, do it. It was some of the greatest stuff in the Golden Age, and Bill Everett is just one of my favorites.
So how did you get a hold of those? Those stories, the Submariner and Human Torch crossovers, like, because you're not that old.
Oh yes, I am. But see what it says under me. See what it says there. I am. I was fortunate. The group of comics fans that I was first involved with, some great people. Were largely older than me, which means they're largely gone now, but they had their old comics. So after reading every EC I could find, and damn near the whole run of All-Star Comics without, before any of that stuff was reprinted, the only experience I had was, those couple short stories in the Jules Pfeiffer book, Great Comic Book Heroes. Right. So for me, it was just like, somebody had invented a beautiful old light bulb.
Right. Well, I that's fantastic. I'm glad, and I agree with you. So I think we're both in agreement that this was a good first step. There's lots. What I liked about it was that what you said was right. It's a very good Marvel comic. It follows what you would expect out of that. I thought that, and I'm glad to hear your perspective. So I kind of paid a lot less attention to the X-Men over the last 12 months, just at most. So I didn't I didn't read everything that led to the ashes.
Right.
And so I think they did a good job of starting us off, giving enough background without retelling the entire story. I think that Jed did a good job of that. I think that the art was really good. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I know that there's a lot to come. I think some of the. I mean, this is a solid X-Men, book.
He did something really cool that I admire. Uh, it is a first issue, and it is the first issue of a relaunch of 1,000 new books. So there is some need to explain what the hell's going on, but
Right.
you don't want it to stop the story. Nothing stops a story faster than Originitis, particularly for the 400th time. So he brought in Magneto to explain all the stuff that had to be explained in Magneto's typical way, which is of being a nice guy with villainous intent, and or maybe it's the other way around. And but he's in character. He gave us the little footnotes there that we needed. In my case, perhaps even to be reminded of what this whole thing is all about. So that was pretty cool. I liked how he did that.
I did too. I thought it was a good job. So I mean, it's definitely the big story of the week in terms of the books came out. A ton of books came out. Let's not be.
That's true.
I mean, just a lot of really good books. We're in a really good phase of the year in terms of books that are coming out and stories that are being told. Obviously, the next couple of weeks will be even bigger with San Diego around the corner, and everybody's going to hold off on their big announcements and whatnot.
And I never understood why. Well, I can't say never, but for the last 20 or 30 years, I haven't understood why. Because everybody is announcing everything in San Diego. Every announcement is a fart in a blizzard. There's just too much.
It's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot. There's a big story.
I just like the phrase "farts in the blizzard."
I know you do. I understand.
I really
understand. I know where it comes from. Like I said, this has been we were on the air 2 nights ago, and like a mountain of comics news has happened in those 2 days.
That's certainly true.
So let's talk about the big story, the biggest story of yesterday.
That was the greatest Facebook posting I think I've ever seen.
I mean, it is. And we are sharing the article from the Beat, comicsbeat.com. This I recommend anybody who's watching, if you don't know the details about what went on, go check out this article from Heidi McDonald. It's really great. Again, it goes into the whole story. So, but the headline is Boom Studios has been acquired by Penguin Random House. I found out because my partner here decided to send me a text that said Penguin goes boom, to which I replied, the company or the villain. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure how that's going.
Yeah.
So yeah, big announcement. There's a lot behind this story. It's something that it wasn't terribly surprising. We knew, in the industry that something's been going on with Boom for a little bit. We had known that Philip Sablik was going to be leaving. Apparently yesterday was his last day. Some other people had left, and so.
And Ross had been dialing back.
Well, Ross has been dialing back for a while, but but again, it was a big news, and I'm happy for the people who made money, who have been giving us comics. I am unhappy for people who've lost their jobs, because some good people have lost their jobs because of it.
That's right.
As is the case in any, merger and acquisition. I'll get to that in a second. But uh, it raises a lot of question marks. Like, Boom has been one of the top 5-ish publishers for the past, you never, like, we used to be able to say this is the market share.
Right.
We can't do that anymore because of the multiple distribution arms. But they were up there, after the top 3. It was a battle between Dark Horse and them, and Aftershock for a while, and Man Cave's got a big say in things. But they are a force. They have a lot of very, very important properties. Some are in the process of being made into other media. Penguin Random House is a book publisher, and so it's interesting that a book publisher is buying a comic book company.
It's not surprising to me.
Well,
it's interesting. I agree.
It's interesting. A lot of the purchases that we've had and VC stuff that we've seen over the last few years, and our guest can certainly talk about some of that, has been more media companies trying to get access to properties to translate them. So a book publisher purchasing it is a little bit of a new wrinkle in today's world.
I have a suspicion about that.
All right. What's your suspicion?
It is strictly a suspicion. I think that Random House wants to game up to other media. They want to be a player in the. We don't know if streaming is going.
Everybody wants to be.
All of that stuff, whatever it is, making movies or TV shows or whatever, they want to be a player, and they probably should, because book publishing is still an endangered species. It doesn't mean it's going to die, but it ain't what it used to be. We have more bookstores now than we had 5 years ago, but not enough. People aren't reading books as much. For better or worse, they are reading comics, so I'm happy. And I think that Random House wants to play in that ballpark, and even if that just positions them better to be sold to another company later on.
Yeah, I mean, again, Boom has made a lot of good comics.
Yes,
they continue to. They have, and part of that is, fostering the right talent, having good people in the office who are, nurturing that talent and executing on those visions. And so they've done a good job. Unfortunately, like I said, some of those people are no longer employed.
That's always the case. Yes,
and some of them are friends, and that's disappointing. And we wish them the best.
Let me point out that Ross Ritchie is one of my favorite people. I really love him.
I understand that. Ross is great. I mean, I've had a great couple of experiences with him. He's always been pleasant to me, when I've run into him. So that's fantastic. And Philip, I love Philip. I've had some good experiences with him as well. That's big news. That was the biggest, news I think of yesterday. There was more though. Distillery, which is one of our favorite new little publishing companies, has ditched Lunar and gone to Diamond as an exclusive. So this whole business of comics, in terms of the money business, trying to gets all complicated, and there's all these infightings and things that go on. And one of the things that has kind of been fueling the news is who's distributing for whom. And I know that, you go back to the days when it was a free for all in the Wild West.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a long period of hegemony in terms of Diamond being the only distributor, and one of COVID's lasting impacts is the disillusion of that hegemony. But that's a big deal. That's a big deal for them. Everybody's trying to make their mark. That was big news. We like Distillery. We hope that works for them. We also, one of the interesting things about the Boom deal is that Boom is a Diamond customer and they distribute through Diamond. And so that's not changing immediately.
Yes. Although, who handles their books, their trade paperbacks?
Somebody else.
Yeah.
Their comics are going to continue to be through. They're going to honor whatever the contract is. I don't know how long it runs. Probably a year or something like that. Then we'll see a change over to Random House distributing their own books, I guess. Before we get to our guest, and our guest is going to be in just a second, Joe's in the green room, so we're going to get to him as soon as possible because we have a lot to talk about with him.
And he's right now.
The other big news in the industry that you kind of hinted at last week when we were talking, that has been announced, and we didn't talk about it Tuesday, is the Paramount acquisition that Skydance has purchased. It's purchasing Redbird.
Maybe.
What?
It's another 6 weeks before that deal can actually close. Other bidders have to be entertained, or at least listened to.
So the primary principal of Skydance, his daddy's given money, like a bunch of billions, to make sure this happens. Which is funny to me because my day job is technology, and so like it's weird that like Larry Ellison, like the founder of Oracle, is now involved in such a pop culture-y thing.
Let's be fair. I mean, it's just
his money is involved.
His money is involved, yes, and everybody has seen his money because he has it all. Anyway,
I'm kind of hopeful. I'm not confident, to be honest with you, in this purchase. Something had to be done for Paramount. I hope that Skydance is the right solution and that it works well for them.
Absolutely. And the history of Paramount is phenomenal. I mean, if you're interested at all in the history of Hollywood and how it developed, the Paramount story is a damn good one. But today, nobody in the movie and TV business, which is what Paramount is in, knows what tomorrow is. And I don't mean tomorrow as in 6 months from now or a year from now. I mean tomorrow as in Friday. They are still trying to sell or make a deal to merge Paramount Plus. There are a couple of people they're talking to. Peacock is one of them, which I think would be a serious mistake.
Yep.
Discovery is another one, which I think would be a serious mistake, but they need to do something. I don't believe that Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be around in 5 years, but
yeah,
we'll see. Maybe they'll get lucky.
All right, we're gonna bring our guest in 2 seconds, but I do want to finish one last comment with what you just said because it relates to Warner Brothers Discovery. I saw a quote today that David Zaslav, everyone's favorite CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, said that he is supporting whichever presidential candidate is most in favor of mergers and acquisitions, which was very honest and very shitty.
Oh, yeah, really goddamn scary. One of the principles of America American philosophy, business and corporate philosophy and sociology, is that, we should have a level playing field, which we've never had, and everybody has a fair shot, which has never been true. But because of Teddy Roosevelt, the last good Republican president, we've had this stuff about trusts and about, antitrust laws. And now that's been totally thrown away. I do not want to see. I hate the fact that there's like 7 banks, or depending on where you live now, there's only like 2, maybe 3 real grocery store chains.
Yep.
You want to know why you're paying so much? Well, it's because the people who own those stores are greedy little bastards who have no competition. I don't want to see that happen in the media business. However, history has told us that if you are playing in the media business, you're playing musical chairs on speed.
Yeah, it's pretty much what the way it's going. Like I said, it's been a crazy 48 hours since or less than 48 hours since we left the air. We will again be back next Tuesday. Just reminding everybody once again to subscribe. We're going to bring in our guest. I am very excited to have Joe on the show tonight. We met. Oh, I guess it's close to 5 years now. We met in Baltimore, and he's always been a great person to talk to about the industry, about the history of comics, about the kind of things we've kind of been talking about tonight in terms of how comics get made, how we can move forward with making new and interesting comics. And I'm going to bring him in. So everybody, welcome in Joe Illidge. Hey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe. Nice seeing you again.
I can't hear you.
Through the miracle. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't hear you.
Yeah.
2 seconds. Just check your settings, see where your stuff is. Like, and as I said, we'll get to this, but Joe got his start, as far as I believe, was with Milestone, as his thing. And there's so many comic books that people have read, who are watching, who are listening, who that Joe's had a part in, and it's just when I make these videos, it's like I try and get as much stuff as I can, but it was difficult because there's just such a list of the work that he's done. It's similar to what you're doing. I do want to acknowledge Silas saying, chiming in on your antitrust rant from a few moments ago.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
So, no,
we can make fun of what Joe's got in his library.
He's got we have definitely some. Is that a Dennis? That's not Dennis.
He's got
definitely some static back there, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and he's got this big ass Catwoman in a box. I don't know what that is.
Did I tell you I have a Dennis print on my walls? I bought the cover to the latest question, the thing that he did with Bill, and he's coming back. We'll bring him back, but I have
talk about Dennis for a while.
We're gonna talk about Dennis.
Yeah, because hey,
you're there
now.
Yes. We got you.
All right.
I can hear you.
Yes, great. I'm gonna turn this so I am more cinematic like you guys.
Let's see if that works.
then
And
we
it
will
does.
cover
It's good.
ourselves as well.
It works.
Awesome.
It works. We're
Awesome.
good. Thanks. Welcome to the show, Joe. How are you?
Quick thinking too.
Yeah, he's his adjusting has to adjust now because he's hung for what he did. I'm gonna pull him out for a second and
Ooh.
see when he comes back to moving.
Okay. Let me make that one comment about Dennis.
Yes.
What I have on my wall,
Oh, I know what you have on your wall.
and you know what I have. Dennis gave me the promotion art for the poster, the promotion poster for the first issue of The Question. Bill Sienkiewicz inked it as he did as he drew the cover, and it's magnificent. It's just magnificent. I love it to death. It's one of my favorite pieces of art.
I agree. Joe's coming back again, so maybe he won't be so cinematic, but we're gonna get him on here and we're gonna talk about some good stuff. Yeah, so I got the cover. It's a print poster of that cover to the most recent Question book that Bill and him did with Jeff Lemire had written it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had my problem is I have the inked version, not the colored version, because he only had one left and he wouldn't give it to me.
Oh,
Yeah. So anyway, it's on our walls. We have Dennis Hart there. There's I also have a Larry Hama sketch over here. Some good stuff. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was one other thing here. We're gonna get to Joe. He's gonna come back. We're gonna talk about what's going on at San Diego. It's a big deal. What goes on in San Diego Comic-Con is, for good or bad, some people say may not be so good, but it is the biggest event in comic books of the year. And it may be getting too big for its own britches.
it's been true for a while.
Did you see the Rob Salkowitz article from Forbes yesterday?
No.
Hey,
Joe.
sorry about that.
We got it. We're good. You're here. We're gonna do it.
Technology.
Yeah. Well, we fight it all the time.
It's a scam.
All right. It really is. It really is. So going back to the front, it's great to be here with you both. Thank you for your patience.
No worries. We're glad to have you.
I'm used to seeing you through a camera.
That's right. The last
We
time.
did this wonderful panel, tribute to Denny O'Neil, a wonderful human being.
Oh my God.
And it was for the San Diego Comic-Con,
Yes, it
except
was.
that we weren't in San Diego. None of it. I don't think
Which meant that we got to save on hotel fees.
Not only that, but geez, I mean, I'm in Connecticut. It takes me 3 weeks to fly to San Diego. Now it's worth it if you shove an In-N-Out burger in my mouth right away. But short of that,
Oh man, yeah, but no, that was a great time. Of course, Denny was one of the best on the Mount Rushmore of editors, and I would say of human beings in comics, right?
Absolutely, damn straight.
Yeah, I was.
Straight.
I was just thinking that we were talking about, when you and I met. I believe that the day that we met was that night that I sat next to Denny for dinner at the.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So that,
yeah.
was a great night.
I don't know if anyone else called this, but I used to call him as a nickname. I called him, and Mike, you will appreciate this. I called him Aristotle. That's who he was to me, right? So I am forever Vic Sage to his Aristotle. Even though he's in the great beyond, I'm still learning, and every now and again, like Lady Shiva in the form of life comes and kicks my ass and kind of helps me up my game in this crazy world.
I appreciate that.
Denny to me he would hate this. Denny is a saint. and I had the privilege of sharing an office with him. They
Wow.
decided to put the two senior editors in this really large office, the only editorial office that actually had a couch, corner office, very nice. 3 years. For 3
Wow.
years. Shared. And you know, I'd been editing and in media and in comics for 23 billion years by that point in time. And I learned so much just by being in the desk next to his, you know.
Yeah. It was so funny. When I was there, you know, talk about environment reflecting people. So Mike Carlin was the executive editor of all of DC, and he was known for Superman. He had the corner office, and Denny was Batman group editor, and he had his office. So Mike's office had windows on two sides. He had all these colorful toys. It had natural daylight. It was amazing. Denny's office, the curtains were drawn. The lights were off except for one desk lamp. And he would be sitting at that desk, always reading scripts or writing. And that told you all you needed to know about those two men. It was the story without words.
Yep, that's great.
Yeah, their techniques and styles are very different. And
100%.
Yeah, and I think both are superlative at what they've done.
That's a fact.
I think that Mike his work on the Superman line was breathtaking. It made more sense than any other editorial regime on Superman.
Absolutely historic.
Yes,
Yep.
so I'm a big fan of both of those guys. Denny and I, little known story, when Mike was thinking of moving over from Marvel to DC, he wanted to talk to us about it. We wanted to talk to him about it. And he didn't want anybody from Marvel to know. So Denny took the three of us to this wonderful Asian restaurant. It was no longer there, of course, but it was just absolutely wonderful. It was like over on 8th Avenue, which is pretty much away from the comics industry. And nobody knew that we were there. And we had about 3-4 hour conversation about what it would be like to come over to DC, what he could do, and what he couldn't do, which is equally important. And that was something, since Denny and I both had come from other publishing houses as well, was something that was high on our lists. And it worked out. Mike said, "Yeah, let's do this." And it was the best Chinese meal I had in my life.
Aw.
So
Wow.
I want to let's talk about you for a sec.
Okay.
Let's talk about can we walk a little bit through your odyssey through comics? You started your career with Milestone, is that right? Is that how you were your first comic job?
In 1993. That's right.
So how did that come about?
You know, the way it came about was, so I had heard of Milestone. I read a few articles about them, and they had an internship program.
Oh.
But we're talking 1993, the internship program didn't pay. And so while I was interested in the company, I wasn't interested in working for free. That wasn't part of my vocabulary. You're talking the 90s. Again, even though at that time, I don't know if any internships were paying, right? And then I suddenly found myself in a position where I was in between jobs, and I walked to a newsstand. I live in Brooklyn, and at that time I lived in the neighborhood called East Flatbush. I walked to a newsstand that was on a corner of Utica Avenue and Church Avenue, and I saw the spinner rack, all the regular comics that I'd grown up with since I was a kid, and I saw an issue of Icon. And it was a second issue, and it had Icon and Rocket, this black superhero duo, grown black man, teenage black girl, surrounded by riot cops. I never saw a comic book cover reflect a social truth back to me like that.
Right.
Never. And when I saw that, I knew in my heart, I was like, Milestone's going to change things. this is not just a blip or a gimmick. They're going to change things. And me, with my 23-year-old hubris, I was like, I want to be there. I want to be with the people who make Icon, and I want to change things. I don't want to be here on the other side of the equation anymore. So I applied for an internship, and it didn't work out the way I thought it would, right? Like, I had been reading comics since I was in second grade. And I was like, oh, I was born for this interview. I nailed it. But I walked in with chips on my shoulders, and, it went kablooey. And a friend of mine who was an intern there stood up for me. He spoke to Dwayne McDuffie and Matt Wayne, and he spoke up for me. And then they gave me a shot. And that was the beginning of my real education of how a comic book company worked. When I was in the High School of Art and Design, I visited Marvel Comics one day as part of a group. So I had a window into it, but I didn't understand the business architecture of it. I didn't understand how creative and finance interweaved. I didn't understand the process of.
That's something people are still trying to figure out today.
Well, this is 100% true. Or more accurately, people don't find finance sexy. They find the creative sexy. But all those other boring things like copyright and trademark and contracts and finance, that stuff they find boring. So they choose not to engage it at their peril.
Yep. Absolutely.
But that's another conversation. So
we're going to get to that conversation, I'm sure.
Good, because that's especially important today.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially important.
More so than ever, because you have the opportunity for more personal and creative freedom than you've ever had, because there's more competition and there's more opportunity, and that's really the word, is there's more opportunity. The first 50 years of comics, nobody understood the finances. It was a bunch of guys who had paper contracts and wanted to put something on the paper, and a bunch of mobsters who had trucks left over from Prohibition. They wanted to distribute magazines. That was the glue, and then it attracted all these cockroach capitalist publishers, small guys who think that they can make a killing, and some of them did. Many of them did for a very short period of time, but the rules didn't exist.
I totally believe that, and I feel like it was people like Neil Adams, people who fought for creator rights, that and people like Paul Levitz, who in his executive position was an advocate for creators. I feel like people like those maybe started to open the window of how the structure worked to creators. For myself with Milestone, one of the founders of Milestone was Derek T. Dingle. He came from Black Enterprise magazine. Mm-hmm. So he came from finance, from outside of comics. So he brought that knowledge to comics, right? And being at Milestone and seeing this company with just a diverse staff, right? People from all different backgrounds, different ages, run by 4 Black men, and the truly innovative universe that they created, and the innovative deal that they made with DC Comics.
Right.
Like, that was the education of a lifetime for my first stop in comics. And then the next education would be Batman editorial.
So you got the internship at Milestone, and
right.
Now when Milestone was kind of folded in a little bit, is it when you went over to DC editorial, right? And that was...
So the timeline was Milestone from 1993 to 1996, Milestone had its own offices.
Right.
And what happened was the Static 25 editorial that Dwayne McDuffie wrote
Yep.
was the impetus for what I would call an erosion of the business relationship between Milestone version 1 and DC Comics. And what that led to was a company contraction that would eventually lead to Milestone actually moving to the DC offices. And we were on the 7th floor. Vertigo was on the other side. We were on the side that was right above DC editorial on 6th. And what happened was Milestone stopped publishing in 1997. And so there was a while in which I was, again, in between jobs. And an assistant editor at DC was a friend of mine named Alisan Morales, informed me that there was a temp position because DC Comics at that time would hire assistant editors and editorial assistants through external temp agencies. And so I was hired that way through an agency. And so I was a temp to Kevin Dooley and Eddie Braganza. And so I worked on Green Lantern, this Jim Starlin series called Hardcore Station, the second volume of Tangent books, Chase by Dan Curtis Johnson and J.H. Williams III and Mick Gray and Lee Lowridge, just like a really great group of books. But because I was a temp, I didn't get credit on any of them. So then that gig lasted for, I think, like 3-4 months. And then I had this very short stint at Simon & Schuster in Star Trek editorial. And what happened was Scott Peterson, who was the number 2 person in the Batman editorial department right under Denny O'Neil, was leaving. And I walked into DC Comics on a Friday afternoon after work at Simon & Schuster, and I went to see Jordan Gorfinkel. I said, "Hey, Gorf, I got a pitch for a 10-page Oracle story for Batman Chronicles." And he said, "That's cool, but I'd like to talk to you about something else." He said, "There's an associate editor position opening up in the Batman department. Do you want it?"
Nice.
So, I'm frozen. Yeah. What do you say to that? So I went back to my bosses at Star Trek. One of them was a former DC editor named Margaret Clark. And I said to her, "Margaret, I got a problem." I said, "I really appreciate the fact that you guys gave me a job when I needed it, but I just got an offer to work in the Batman office, and I don't know what to do." And she said, like, without hesitation, "Are you kidding? You should run there, and you should take the job."
Yeah.
And I did. And I did. Right. And that was the beginning of that. And that was 1998. So they had just started one of the riskiest events ever in the history of Batman, and quite frankly, in the history of comics, called No Man's Land. Right, which was a weekly 1-year event. And so I got to go in at the beginning of a historic event for Batman and for comics, and I got to work in the editorial office that at that time was called Camelot. So I got to work with Denny, Jordan Gorfinkel, Darren Vincenzo, and then it was me. It was, the 4 of us. Mm-hmm. And so that was the next level of education for me, because that's when I learned that Batman was an intellectual property and everything that entails. And you disobey the rules of an intellectual property at your absolute peril. And I learned this.
So it's a great lesson. And if you follow your career post DC, it is a lesson that you seem to be teaching others.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that initial philosophy at Milestone about educating, bringing people in, mentoring.
Yes.
That has been around from day one in comics and in other media, but not to the extent that it was over at Milestone. Milestone turned it into an art form. I mean, you know, there would be studios, and studios would hire assistants, and you'd learn how to, you know, letter or whatever, and you'd work your way up, and all of a sudden you realize you're Jules Pfeiffer and you're writing for Will Eisner. And you know, that's kind of cool, but Jules was like 14 when he walked into the front door. Joe Kubert had the same type of career. Mentoring is the most important thing a person can do. I've been doing it since I swear, since I was 19. I had kids younger than me working on the Chicago 7 conspiracy trial staff, and I was mentoring them. I know. There should be a law against that part, but I do believe in that very firmly. It is our responsibility as creators, even as editors, to prime the pump and to keep that pump primed.
100%.
That's our major job.
Yes, 100%. When I went to Milestone in the beginning, I worked in the business department under Derek Dingle, and I originally went there to be a writer. And then Dwayne McDuffie opened my eyes to what being an editor was. Because I grew up not caring about that credit. I saw it in the Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry Austin, Glynis Oliver, Tom Wojciechowski X-Men, but I didn't care. I saw it in Marvel Team Up, but I didn't care. But Dwayne made me care. And he made me understand that it was a profound responsibility and a vocation. And so he put the bug in me to do it. So, and, you know, let's be clear, and this is not opinion, this is fact. Dwayne McDuffie was one of the best editors that North American comics ever had and may ever have. And so to have him as my first teacher was amazing. But then you go to Denny O'Neil. Right? And it's a whole other level, yeah, because his understanding of story and character stakes, and also, look, Paul Levitz is basically one of the architects of the standard story structure, A plot to B plot to C plot in the North American superhero genre, right? And so he was the president at the time. When I got there, Jeanette was there. Jeanette left. Paul Levitz went to the top. And once every year, at the end of the year, I think, Paul would, sorry for all this noise. I live on a very exciting block here in Brooklyn. Paul would meet with his editors once a year and talk about what you're going to do for the next year in your book, in your titles. So if we were talking about Birds of Prey, which was one of the titles I edited, okay, what are the next 12 months of Birds of Prey going to be about? More specifically, what is the theme? What are these characters going to go through in this year that makes this year part of the collective mythology of Dinah and Babs and whomever is in their orbit? And those were just amazing conversations to have.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, that's part of your job. Like, the president of the company and I get to have a conversation for 30 minutes about story. And of course, I get to learn from him and then download that as an editor and then execute, right? So, you know, to your point about mentorship, Mike, not only is it crucial, but if I'm going to be candid with you, I think that we are seeing a significant lack of editorial mentoring these days. Absolutely. And I think part of the reason for that is because there's so much product that has to get pushed out in a month. And you have a lot of these editors, and they're basically keeping the trains moving on schedule. And there's not enough editors for all the books. So in that ecosystem, it's harder for the kind of story mentoring that people like Archie Goodwin did, God rest his soul, Denny O'Neil, God rest his soul, Dwayne McDuffie, God rest his soul. And I'm sure while she was still an active editor, and as far as I'm concerned, she's the best living editor in present day, Karen Berger. Yeah. So we're seeing significant change in the industry behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, at every level. And I think that's part of it. I think the story mentoring.
So
Paul had a very just on this one point. Paul has a very methodical approach to writing. I mean, it's very technical. It was Joe Staten who ratted him out to me about this, but he would really meticulously plan A to B to C to D. Now that's not the only way to do it, and some people can do it just off the top of their heads. It's like watching Jack Davis draw an infinite piece of art with 43 billion people on it while he's playing golf. I mean, it's there's all kinds of ways to do it. But Paul's led himself to not only mentoring his staff, but it led to him using the knowledge that he had acquired of the business end as a force for good.
Yes. He leveraged it in a way that it was beneficial to creators. And it's one of the reasons why various creators within the DC ecosystem are able to reap financial benefits from the mass media translation and proliferation of intellectual properties.
Right. It's intellectual properties has all these syllables. I just keep on thinking, hey, comics.
So
you gotta, every once in a while you gotta walk back a little bit and realize, hey, comics. Hey kids, comics. Just like
100%. 100%.
I want to and we're going to get to that part very soon, but you kind of brought this up. So I had this question kind of laid out for us, and I think it's a good time to get into it. You've worked with a bunch of indie, for lack of a better word, comics companies.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one piece of advice that you would have for smaller publishers that is most important to success today? Is there one thing you think that smaller publishers need to pay attention to? And we've kind of talked about like the story part of it, but like, is there something else?
Okay. If there's one thing, I would say it's this. We have been led to believe as a culture that competition is both inevitable and good. Both of those things are untrue. It is not inevitable and it's not necessarily good. I think for any small publisher, it's very important for them to identify their lane. So if you enter the business and you decide that 5 years from now, you want to be that company, you're making a mistake. Set your own lane so that you're not competing with those other companies, so that this thing that you do is what you do in a way that nobody else does it. And what's important about that is from that authenticity, you build community. And through building community, you increase the chances of ensuring your survival. Because a community that really believes in you and has faith in you, they will stick with you through thick and thin and through the tumultuous nature of this industry.
It's a great point, and I think there's a lot of truth in it, and I'll tell you why. As a consumer first, I want to believe in a company. I want to believe in the community that a publisher is building. And I am often blindsided. I am often betrayed in that belief because they are chasing dollars, and they're not staying true to who I thought they were. Some of those are companies you've worked for.
100%. 100%.
And I think that's fair. There are some of the companies gaining some steam, gaining some speed that I hope take that into account and take that perspective.
Some have. What we've been talking about off and on over the last year about Ahoy Comics, that's what they've done.
Yes.
That was my approach when we started First Comics. We're not trying. We're not trying to be DC. Maybe we could have been Harvey, but we just didn't have it in us. We became First Comics. You get the best people that you can, and you work with them.
And listen, to this day, no publisher has done a comic like American Flag. That's just a fact. That's just a fact.
Well, there's laws for that, but yes.
And as a society, we've just caught up to American Flag, right? So, but, you mentioned Ahoy Comics. I had a pleasure of writing a short story for them. I think they're a quintessential example of what I just said.
Yep, absolutely. That's fair.
Because even though their upper management is comprised of what I'll call, Generation 1 OG Vertigo editors, they are not a clone of Vertigo at all. Ahoy Comics is truly its own thing. And I think it's one of the reasons why they are kind of like the little engine that could, the slow and steady wins the race story, because they've identified their lane and no one else occupies that lane. And to me, where part of that comes from, and I'm going to get a bit businessy, esoteric here, but so I was really profoundly affected by a book written by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And that book not only talked about knowing your purpose, your company's purpose, and exactly how your company is going to serve the world, but it cited examples about the different rates of success between companies that know their why and companies that don't. While I was in the green room, you mentioned Larry Ellison and Oracle.
Yeah.
Larry Ellison is, of course, a legend, and Oracle is, of course, a giant, but never to the level of Steve Jobs and Apple. Right? So, right? And
Larry's eternal consternation.
Right? So when you look at companies and the ups and downs they go through, I suspect you can connect that to their core understanding or lack thereof of their why. What makes us different? What is our service to the world? Right? And I seriously believe you can chart that, and I believe that you can connect that to leadership. Right? So when I'm looking at the industry, that's part of what I'm looking at, like the companies that seem to have a very clear, consistent, cohesive vision versus the companies that are continuing just based off of inertia.
Sure. I get that.
Absolutely. Let me give you a small piece of trivia. Howard had 2 assistants on American Flag when we were doing it at first. One was Dean Haspiel.
Oh my goodness!
Great, one of the greats. I mean, nobody knew he was going to be one of the greats.
Yes,
but we tolerated him. And Larry O'Neill.
Oh my goodness!
Son.
Oh my goodness!
So I just wanted to drop that in.
Wow. Well, look at that, right? Again, that goes to mentoring because look at the kind of advocate for the authenticity of the comic book sequential art form that Dean Haspiel has become,
Absolutely.
right? And you know what I mean? So it's like, it's again, it's that mentorship, it's that continuation of philosophy. That's part of the joy of the studio construct, right? It's not just the bonding and the camaraderie, but it's this exchange of ideas, and then people graduate from those studios and then they create their own studios, just as Dean did. Dean created a studio, right? At one point he combined two studios because of what was happening in the wake of COVID in real estate. So yeah. So
you Brooklyn boys sure stick together, don't you?
kind of.
Yeah. A lot of things about
Let's remember, just in furtherance of your point, that Howard, who hired those two guys, he was mentored by Wally Wood.
Oh my goodness.
At the same time, also mentoring Larry Hama and Paul Kirshner and Ralph Reese and all these incredible people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, one of the things you had mentioned, I was going to throw in there that you can say a lot of things about Dean, but you can never say he's inauthentic.
That is a fact, right? And the way you know that, in general, for any human being, is because being authentic in this world gets you in trouble inevitably. Right? And
to quote a much greater man than all of us combined, it's good trouble.
Yes, indeed. God rest the congressman's soul. Yes, indeed.
Well, I was a comic book writer, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. All right. We need to shift gears slightly because we this is so good. But the Epiphany Engine.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. First of all, let's share this with everybody here for a second. Let's see what we can find from this. See if everybody. Can you guys hear this?
Yes.
Weapons drawn, draw the line to be sworn. Through the time can be torn. No mistake in my, ain't no faking my, ain't no breaking my bond. My word, bond. Fam is my bond. My word, bond. Stand on my, no they misunderstand me. If we have to fight, then we come together, that's family. Mysteries that we see.
First of all, great title. Great title.
Thank you very much. I will take credit for that.
Second of all, who designed the logo?
What's the what? Say that again.
Who designed the logo?
Oh, the logo was designed by AndWorld, which is a lettering and graphics studio that was founded by Darren Bennett, who's one of the best letterers in comics. So AndWorld Studios designed the Epiphany Engine logo.
We need to get Darren on the show someday.
I am always excited about a project that involves people I like. And I'm more excited about projects that involve people who are friends of mine, And then I like projects that boldly go where nobody ever thought of going, for good or bad. And you got all three. I'm looking forward to this puppy.
Thank you.
This is Ray's cover, right?
Yes, this is Ray. Ray Anthony Height did the black and white artwork, and the colors are by Andrew Dowhouse.
Yep, awesome. Like this, there's so many options and colors. This Kickstarter is going on right now. I just put the link to the Kickstarter in the chat, so everybody where you're watching, make sure you click on that and make sure you back it. There's a week left, and we still need to get to the goal. Tell everybody what this is about.
So the Epiphany Engine is a 192-page graphic novel, which is being crowdfunded on Kickstarter. It represents the combined efforts of 45 Black indie publishers going back 30 years to the beginning of their businesses. And I would say over 60 characters and maybe over 70 characters, and I'd say over 50 creators. And it's a story about a Black family of super scientist explorers, mother, father, 2 sons, and a daughter. And an enemy out of nowhere defeats the undefeatable family and scatters them to different parallel universes. So now they're all alone. And it takes the multiversal village of the Black superheroes of the last 30 years of publishing to find them and bring them back together so they can discover the truth about this mysterious being that scattered them throughout the multiverse. And so in one sense, it is a big cosmic scale story. I mean, it cannot be denied that Crisis on Infinite Earths is the white whale of superhero comic grand scale events. This is just a fact, and it is a fact.
No, I agree with you 100%. I love the way you phrased it.
Right? And listen, it happened around the same time as Secret Wars. Secret Wars was, of course, executed and conceived by one of the geniuses of 20th century comics, Jim Shooter. So both of them happened in tandem. Crisis qualitatively and its impact was on another level. So this is a love letter to Crisis on Infinite Earths in a sense, and just the same way that Crisis was as much a story about the golden and silver ages of DC Comics, this is a story about the 30 years of Black independent comics and how that legacy has come together today in a crossover event of unprecedented scale. There were 2 crossover events that previously happened, but not one this big. This is the ultimate collaborative effort. And so we have a number of creators. Our head writer is Brandon Thomas, who I will die on the hill that Brandon is one of the best writers of superhero and science fiction comics.
He is
today.
He is fantastic.
This one cool for me. What makes this one cool is that it's in a 200-page book.
Yes.
Here it is. You throw it on a guy's lap when he can finally stand up. He's got the whole thing.
100%.
And I love that. I love that. When Marv was explaining what Crisis was about in a business meeting full of like marketing people and stuff, not comics people, not what we think of as comics people. Mm-hmm. He was explaining the whole thing. Keep in mind this is like the early to mid 80s.
80s, right?
Marv was explaining the whole plot to people who, there were no movies, superhero movies and stuff. The word multiverse was just a figment in Grunwald's mind. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
So he's explaining to them. He's not pitching the story. They're already doing it. So he's explaining what is happening. And they were laughing their asses off. Now, I give Marv serious props for making it through that meeting. Knowing me the way I do, I would have just shot everybody. But
that is on brand for you.
Yeah, it's on brand. But nobody'd be surprised.
Right.
But Marv plotted his way through that in order to sell that concept to a bunch of people who had to understand it in order to make it financially viable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jim didn't have to do that with Secret Wars. Jim was running the ship. That's right. It.
That's right.
And DC was a very different company than Marvel in those days. So now that little untold story, I think, is a Herculean effort that needs to be rewarded.
100%. And, to speak to that, part of the reason why this had to be one book is because, part of what happens in our industry is the serialized format is so physically vulnerable, unfortunately, right? It's when you package a book and has a spine and you can put it on the bookshelf that it has some kind of durability, that it's an artifact, that it has a different type of meaning. And we wanted that experience up front. We wanted this to be a graphic novel first and only, as opposed to serialized and
Right.
then collected, right? So when people have this, they will read it, and it is one big story. And it was important, unlike Crisis on Infinite Earths, where Marv wrote the whole thing. Now, of course, there were so many spin-offs, but with this, the same way that we're talking about a village of characters throughout the multiverse, a village of publishers, we're also talking about a village of creators. So the way the story is structured is Brandon, as the head writer, is writing the first chapter, and the last chapter is the bookends. And there are these horizontal tangent chapters of each of the 5 family members that are by different creative teams. And then vertically, there are these interludes that are by different creative teams. So it has a very interesting construction that, if I had to think of a parallel, the closest one would be the old All-Star Comics and the Justice Society stories, where you have the team together in the beginning in their Masonic lodge. They split off to fight these different villains. They come back together. They're united. They're the Justice Society, right? So, and this cover that you're showing by Chris Cross and Will Quintana,
Yeah,
this is a love letter to George Perez.
of course it is.
It 100%
Ross
is.
totally
And,
nailed it.
I was talking with someone the other day, and George Perez is the first artist that made me realize that comic books were art, that they were an art form. And so I said to the person, I think Cross, because I call him Cross, we've known each other for 30 something years. I think Cross really channeled his inner George Perez. And the person said to me that, no, what I said was, I think this cover is making George rise from the grave to give a clap. And the person said to me, no, George is looking down. George is looking down from heaven and seeing this and smiling, because this is a representation of the love that people like him put into this, right? This business is fueled by love.
Sure.
Absolutely. We see that in comics. Now, maybe it's because I'm in comics, but we see that in comics more than in any other entertainment medium.
That's a fact.
We know who we owe. Because they raised us, because they entertained us, because they made us think.
Yep.
It's an interesting point, and Mike, what you said, I think is true. I feel like there is this love. We do this because we love it. Everyone is in this business because they love it. Now, one of the facts is that in this entertainment business, it's probably the least lucrative
Yes.
of them. But so love has to be a factor.
Yes.
But if you look at music or film or acting or whatever, there's something about when people are creating comics, is as much as they're doing equal amounts, at least they are doing it for themselves, but they're doing it for others to share with others just as much, or even more. They want, the concept of making comics is to share it with people.
100%. I mean, listen, story is one of the best things that humanity has ever created for itself.
Yes.
Right? Because that is the way in which we try to figure out our place on this spinning mud ball of chaos. And we try to find community with other people so that, we hope that we're not alone. Right? And comics is probably the most intimate art form, and I would argue the superior art form in terms of the combination of words and images. I consider it superior to film. I consider it superior to illustrated books. There are things you can do in comics you cannot do in any other medium. And when we decide as a community to totally go in deep and figure out the 100% potential of comics, we're just going to be exploding brains all over the world all over again, the same way that people like David Mazzucchelli did with Asterios Polyp.
This is our job. That's what we're supposed to do.
100%.
That is what we want to do. When you were outlining the story, I was thinking, like Justice Society, like All-Star Comics, except for the fact that it was all one writer. But that was it, and that was sort of the cool part. Although the best stories came later, but nonetheless, it was just that's exactly what I was thinking, and I think I was a little off when I said that makes our medium unique. We share a quality with another art form, and that's music. It's the same type of love, involvement, commitment to be a good musician, and music is a communication skill. So and it's a community building skill, and
there is a lot of that.
I hope like that.
I would agree.
When you were telling the story, and you I agree with the All-Star Comics. One of the other things I was thinking about, and I know you'll appreciate this. I was thinking about Justice League 200.
Oh my God. I still remember buying that off the newsstand. Like, I mean, come on.
It is in the words of Tom Zoller, it is the most comic book ever written.
Oh, definitely, right? And it's interesting. We've seen the crossover event, right, is such an important historical mechanism and storytelling format in superhero comics.
It's
right?
the topic of the week. Mike's article earlier this week was about Mystery in Space 75, which was the crossover with Adam Strange.
Okay, well, I got to read that. Well, I got to read that.
It's on the website. That's like it's like the Philosopher's Stone of crossovers.
Wow.
So so it is an important part of this superhero storytelling where you have a universe where you have multiple stories. Like if you have multiple characters, they eventually will, you want to see what happens if they bang up against each other, right? And I think this concept of taking, years worth of love and creation that these artists and writers and creators have put into these characters and bringing them together, I think is brilliant. It's one of the things that I've run across within the community where and something that Mike and I even talked about certain things. We'll get to that someday, but it's important. Like I know people who are in the community who say I have this character, and they're like, oh, I have this character. Maybe we can put those characters together. Like it's part of the initiation into the thing, and it's like it's in the DNA of wanting to make stories.
It's fun. I mean, come on, it's totally fun. So this is not just work; it's fun. Now, I'm on the subject of improvisation, which actually connects to music and comics. I'm going to relocate rooms. So this conversation is going to continue while I move from my studio to the bedroom.
Go ahead and do that. Pop out. I'll pop you out, and then.
You sure? Because I can just stay.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can do it on.
Yeah, I'm just going to stay. We're going to have some fun here.
As we're moving, we're going to change topics just for a minute, away from Epiphany Engine, which is great. We'll come back to it, but San Diego's coming up in a couple weeks. You're going to be there.
Yes.
And a panel has been announced you're going to be on, and it's kind of something we talked about earlier. You're going to be doing a panel that is a Dwayne McDuffie remembrance panel.
Oh, yes.
About that.
Oh yeah. So Charlotte Fullerton McDuffie was kind enough to invite me to be a part of this. Okay, I think that's good lighting.
Ooh, nice
there.
lighting.
Yeah. And Charlotte and I have known each other for years, and there's no to that question, right? And what's going to be really fun is that we're all going to share memories of Dwayne that are not things that you've read in all the interviews.
Great.
Right. So it's going to be these personal experiences that speak to, our time with the man. Right. Because, one of the things that happens inevitably is that people become ideas. They become ideas greater than themselves. They become, no pun intended, iconic. Right. Dwayne certainly is that. But, it's fun to just get into well, this little thing that happened, or this little anecdote, this thing he said that I didn't get it at the time, but 5 years later, I was like, aha, right? So, and the panel that Mike and I were on, the virtual panel a few years ago about Denny O'Neil, so that's part of it. It's the humanizing, right? Because at the end of the day, we're saying, very few people are making a lot of money off comics. And so it's really a bunch of humans finding kinship and having fun. And hopefully we can all coexist, whether we like everything we see or anything we see or not. Let's just coexist here and just have fun making these things. So again, Epiphany Engine is also fun, and all of the creators involved can feel that, they know that. And we've had people outside of the group, just luminaries throughout comics, share it and really help, give it some more wind. And that's how we know we're on to something, right? People want to see other people having fun. They want to see them breaking rules. They want to see them doing exciting things. The worst thing that can happen is comics becoming boring. Comics should never become boring.
No, you're absolutely right. It is the spark that lights us as creators, and we give it back to the reader.
100%. 100%.
That's the important thing. I think that in comics, unlike even music, the relationship between the end user and the creators is very thin, very narrow, very narrow. And a lot of the people that we're entertaining with their comics in a couple of years are going to be making better comics than we ever did. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. When the torch gets passed, formally or not, and you start seeing this new crop of crazy ideas. And the most important thing is to not resent it, not be afraid of it, not belittle it, but be happy for them, because there was a time when we were them. And the generation before us was probably who are they with their crazy ideas, right? So this passage, it's part of the process, it's part of the honor, and it behooves us to support it and to help uplift it.
Yes. 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 That's in the job definition. The original first generation of comics creators were also fans. They were fans of newspaper strips.
That's right.
They were young. Yes. They weren't experienced enough. They were not necessarily wasps, so they couldn't get into the illustration field, So they were looking for a job, but this is the cool part. So they got into comics and they created the medium. Let us never forget that guys like Joe Kubert and Gil Kane were fans who got into the business when they were 14 years old.
Yes.
Sure. 14.
Yeah. Jim Shooter was 13.
Yeah.
And when he started Legion of Superheroes, I think Paul Levitz was 14 when he started his zine. So
I think he's
yeah.
14 now.
Oh, God bless you. So
But it
yeah,
continues. It continues.
yeah,
Trevor
yeah,
was what,
yeah.
17?
Yep.
You know, there are, you know, the next generation is coming. The next generation is always coming. Thank God.
That's right. That's
Thank
right.
God.
And
Yes.
we have a duty to them. And they'll tell you that. And in comics, it works.
Well, that's part of what Epiphany Engine is, right? Part of the idea is that when you are done with this book, you're going to want to explore these other publishers.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, who created Acolyte? Who created Midnight Tiger? Who created Ace Blade? Who created these characters, right? So at the end of the book, there's going to be like, you know, a list of the publishers, and I think their URLs, and it's like, go explore, explore the multiverse of Black publishers that has existed that you may not have known about for the last 30 years, right? So that's part of the fun too, that these events can be a path forward, just as Crisis on Infinite Earths was a path forward to the new DC and the reimagining of these characters. I mean, I'll never forget what it was like to pick up Wonder Woman 1, to pick up Batman 404, to pick up Man of Steel _1 while I was in college. And I think Man of Steel might have been weekly. I don't remember, but there was such a joy in the discovery again.
I'll give you a better concept of that. With the thing about Crisis on Infinite Earths is that it exposed me not to Batman or Wonder Woman or Superman, but it exposed me to other characters that I didn't know about. So when question number 1 hit the stands, I had seen that character in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I said, I want to get that.
That's right.
Or Captain Atom or Blue Beetle, you know, when the Charlton characters were brought back in. And you know, even though there were other things, like, you know, I was a big fan of Roy Thomas's work at DC, so I was loving everything he was doing with Earth 2, but like those characters were incorporated. And when that happened in that event, I mean, we can talk about Crisis on Infinite Earths for like 5 hours.
Please. That's a whole podcast.
But
that's a whole podcast.
But that concept of introduce that concept of a crossover and what it does and what you're doing with Epiphany Engine is saying, hey, you might have heard about this. Like, I'm friends with Ray Anthony Height, and I love Midnight Tiger, but there are other things in this book that I probably haven't read, and I'm looking forward to it. Exactly.
You know, it's funny. One of the things that really taught me the proper impact of the crossover was so I mean, I've watched too much TV in life. I was a big fan of the David E. Kelly legal dramas. So there was a time when Ally McBeal and The Practice did a crossover. And it was so brilliantly executed because the characters of Ally McBeal could not handle the violence of the world of The Practice. And the people of The Practice could not handle the happy-go-lucky zaniness of Ally McBeal. So, like, these characters crashed against the other characters' cultures, and they were impacted by this. And neither of them ever wanted to go back to those other worlds again. Like, there was a character in Ally McBeal that was traumatized by something they saw. So that's another thing, like, events have to matter. And so one of the things that's going to also happen from this, and any of the independent creators can do this, they can do a story in the future and they can refer to this. And they can show that their character was impacted like this. Like, one of their characters can be like, I now know there's a multiverse. What the hell do I do with that? Right? It changes your whole perspective on everything, right? So we're going to allow for that. And so the impact will be ongoing for a while.
The cool thing about the multiverse is that if you read up, study quantum physics, which is a wonderful thing to study because nobody knows what it is and everybody knows that everybody is full of shit. It's great. It's science. It's science fiction. It's the same thing at the same time, which is the best description of quantum physics. And they're allowing that's sort of built on the concept of there being multiverses. That's part of the philosophy. It's sort of reluctant, but I think back to when, like guys like Ray Bradbury and stuff, they would talk about their influences, and we talk about, why they were so interested, why Ray was so interested in doing comics and having his stuff adapted for comics and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, these scientists who do stuff that even they don't understand got their start from a concept that was well developed in the early 60s in comic books.
You go.
I'm taking credit for some of that on behalf of the comics industry.
That's what you said.
So what are you doing at San Diego other than the panel?
Wow. I'm going to be on a number of panels at San Diego. I'm going to be on one panel that is moderated by a librarian who goes by Jack Phoenix and basically talks about civic responsibility as it relates to comics. I'm going to be on a panel that's moderated by Rick Hernandez, that was started by Liz Folda, who's a PR person who runs Sphinx PR.
We're friends of Liz.
Yep. And it's basically about the comics that made us. So you discuss a character that is part of your origin story that has had an impact in the industry or the world that you did not anticipate, that you did not foresee. So there will be that panel. There's going to be a very special panel on Sunday, which I can't say what it is, but it will be announced on Sunday. And that's going to be one that I'm very excited about.
Is that part of the big news for next week? Because you did tease something.
Yeah. I said 1 week from today on Sunday. Yes, that is going to be the big news, what that panel is about. I will tell you
this Sunday there's going to be big news.
Yeah,
Stay
that
tuned
panel
to
will
Joe
be
Illidge's socials for that.
Sunday the 28th at 10 a.m. I'm very excited about it. And, one of the things about just like this industry and kind of like being in it after 31 years, still being in it, is I remain grateful, right, to be a part of this. That this industry was here so that I found a place, because, I was a Black geek kid of the 70s and a Black geek teenager of the 80s. And I was one of those kids. I went to High School of Art and Design. I went to School of Visual Arts because I had this dream of being the next John Byrne and George Perez. That was not my path, but the art education that I got would be integral in becoming an editor, and also integral in becoming a writer, because I understand, to the degree that I can, of course, what the artist is doing. So I'm not going to ask for a crowd scene of 200 people. I'm not going to write the sentence, give me a crowd scene of 200 people, goodbye, and then you got to do it, which is madness. Or I'm not going to say, hey, this is a 9-panel page, and one of them is this fight panel between 2 super teams or something like that. It's like, I understand real estate. I understand storytelling. I understand what I'm asking you to do as an artist. So it helps me be a better writer, a better editor, and a better collaborator. And so I am thankful. I am eternally thankful.
You just put your finger on 2 things that make comics work that make comics professionals unique, and that is it is a collaborative medium. Even if
100%.
you're writing and drawing it all yourself, it's still a collaborative medium with all these other folks. And also, it is a visual medium. First and last and everything in between, comics is a visual medium, and writers who don't draw, which is okay, I don't draw, well, damn well better know that this is a visual medium. If you're not writing visually, you're in the wrong job.
100%. Listen, there are writers whose careers have been established because they've been blessed with the right artists.
Yes.
Artists, good artists make good writers look great. And bad artists make good writers look okay. There's no way you interact with the comic and you don't connect it. I like someone on Facebook I know was talking about the recent Human Target maxi series, and basically the post that they did put Tom King at prominence. And I said, listen, Tom King's a great writer, but Human Target is the Greg Smallwood masterclass.
It's
just so we're clear about this. And I said, if any other artist did Human Target, it wouldn't have landed the way it did, because Greg is so artistically literate and brought so many sources to it that it makes you feel something for Christopher Chance. Like, it was so funny because when everyone else has done the Human Target, it's about, this man choosing to assume other lives and put himself in the way of harm. But I think this story was about the human target of the heart.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, I agree with you.
The thing about Human Target is that it was a backup feature.
Yes, it was in Detective Comics or Action Comics. Action.
And it moved around, I'm sure, but
yeah.
Nonetheless, it was a backup, and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful way to pad out a book. But what the miniseries just did, the 12 issues, this was a 250-page story.
Come on.
And he never got that before. Or will again, I guess. But
not in the same way. I'll try to be quick about my praise of this, but I didn't think you could beat the Peter Milligan Human Target. I didn't think you could, right? Like Edwin Biokovic, Javier Rodriguez, I think, and like Cliff Chang. I didn't think anyone could write a Human Target story that would give a shit about after that. But man, this one did. And that speaks to collaboration. And to your point, Mike, it's visual first. I think someone told me Walt said this. Walt is in Walt Simonson. Like, if you have the art but no words, it's a comic. If you have the words but no art, it's not a comic.
Right.
And that's it. That is it. Right.
So if he said that, that's brilliant.
Right. So to your point about the writer perspective, yes. We have to know that the artist served so many roles, if you wanted to parallel it to film, so many roles. And it is truly a blessing. Like, I'm writing a few projects now. And Mike, you know this, Bob, you know this. You can be having a bad day. You open your inbox, you get some new pages, and the clouds have parted and sun is shining on you again. That's the feeling.
Oh yeah.
That's a feeling I'll never get tired of, and it's amazing. I love it.
It's the most fulfilling moment of the day. It's like, look what this guy did.
Yeah, I guess it's one of the greatest gifts that I have. To be lucky enough to be doing what I'm doing here is that I will get texts art. Just people saying, "Hey, check this out," and and then I have to sit on knowing that, like, I get to follow up on the concept of talking about Tom. Tom's a friend, and he is a great writer.
That's a fact.
And he will tell you everything about how Greg Smallwood made that book. But what I have behind me here, right? That was
yes.
I have Mr. Miracle behind me, and
yes,
Mr. Miracle would not have hit the way it did if Mitch Gerrits did not draw it.
Facts. Not only that,
there are some of my favorite panels. They're not even written. It's like, I will tell you right now, my favorite panel in that entire series is the last panel in issue 5, I believe. It's the one. It's the love, the one where he's holding her on the cover. And after Barda has beat the shit out of everybody, she stands and they're facing each other, and she said, "Stay," and I cried.
Yeah,
because she's like, we're gonna fight.
Yeah,
it was that turning point right there in that issue, and it's because of that very simple way that he put them, and Tom's art direction is pretty intense, but it just the way that Mitch was able to put that together with one word, but the everything that leads to it, just it moves you. And that's the thing about comics, is that visual medium will move your soul.
It's a fact. And you talk about Mr. Miracle. So I haven't finished reading Mr. Miracle yet, and I'll tell you why. I made the mistake of not buying it every month. I believe that it was a book designed to be read in monthly installments. I have the trade, and I tried to read it as a trade, and I'm 2/3 of the way through. If you try to read that as a trade, it will emotionally destroy you.
Oh yes,
it will pulverize you. Right?
Absolutely.
So I need to rethink how I read that. The one that I read like in 4 hours, like it was 11 p.m. and then the next thing I knew it was 3 a.m. I read the entire Strange Adventures. I could not stop reading that. And I'm a guy that grew up on Adam Strange and, Alana and Zardath and Ran and the whole thing. And I couldn't stop reading it. And after I was finished with it, I was angry at Tom, who I don't know personally. I was angry at him. But you know what? That's a good thing, because the worst thing you can have is a comic book that you close it and it has no impact on you.
Right. Absolutely.
The best thing you can have is something, even if it pisses you off, that's an impact. It made you feel something, and you can do something with that later. Yeah. So, yeah. And you don't get that without these creators that find each other and become the definitive teams of our time. You don't get that without the Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. You don't get that without the Tom King and Mitch Gerads. You don't get it
without Claremont and Byrne.
Oh my God, Claremont and Byrne, without Barry Windsor Smith and Barry Windsor Smith when he did Weapon X, right? Without Denny and Neil Adams, without Denny and Dennis Cowan.
Right. Speaking of Denny and Neil, I'm sure you will recall the Superman versus Muhammad Ali book.
Oh yes.
I happened to be doing a convention when the book actually came out on the newsstands. Wow. And I come back to New York, and there's Neil. I mean, okay, he works there. That's all right. That's not weird. But he knew I was at this convention. He says, "So how do they like the book? How did they respond?" And I said, "Oh, all over the map. People love the book, but a lot of people are like really angry with the book." And Neil, big ass smile comes up on his face. He says, "Yeah, what part?" And I go, "Well, you know what part? That down shot of Superman after Ali beat the shit out of him and he's lying on the canvas.
That's it.
Black and blue. That's Superman." And
that's right.
laughed his ass off for about a month. For about a month, because that was exactly the intention. So yeah.
I mean, but that's one of the great comic books.
Mike's on the cover of it.
Oh,
I am on the back cover.
oh man. One of
But
the
I'm sitting next to Steve Ross, who owned Warner Communications. So
oh man.
good seat.
Yeah,
That's
you definitely had a
wild.
good seat.
That's wild. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I mean, this is what we do here. I mean, this is why, and I thank everybody for listening and letting us, do this, but this is what comics is about. This is what we live for. We talk about the business of the industry. We talk about, pop culture and another medium, but, everybody who we have on this show, Mike and I included, are idiots that are
idealistic ones at that.
Yes, you can't do this without being that way. Like if you our hearts are moved. They're risen and they're crushed because of the way that people have learned and are able to express the frailty of humanity and the successes of our race and our species in this medium, and that's why we do this.
What this interview has been all about is love.
Yeah,
100%.
Love for the medium. And let us remember that this is a medium that 70 years ago was being the subject of book burning all over America. All over America. Massive book burnings.
Yes.
This is where we've come.
And we've gone full circle. And we've gone full circle, yes. And we're still here. And this is also an industry, you two were talking about the business while I was in the green room. And part of what this industry is now enduring, and I dare say that circumstances have thrown an enema in the industry, is the removal of the narcissists, the removal of the exploiters, the people, and I wrote about this in a Popverse article. It's those people who want to use this thing that we love and step on the people who make it just so they can get deals, just so they can go up some kind of imaginary ladders to some imaginary status in this world of artificiality. And it thrills me to no end that we are compressing to a point where the companies that are left are publishers interested in books and stories and art form, and the people who are left are the ones that love it. Now what we all have to do is figure out how to be happier within it, because it is an industry that still has a number of hurdles to get over, but the people who are here love the stuff. They respect it.
Look how far we've come, and use that energy to go further.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
So we're getting towards the end of our time. I want to remind everybody, if you go in the comments, you will see a link to the Epiphany project, the Epiphany Engine, which is on Kickstarter right now. It ends next Friday. So there's about a little over a week left, 7 days and some change to go. We need to get this funded. You're about 80%.
Yeah,
right now.
We're almost 80% funded. And we really appreciate everyone who believes in this and sees what this is and has, come on board the engine. We're looking for other people to do it. The publisher, Advent Comics, who is owned by Tony Cottrell, he already invested a certain amount of money so that when we launched this Kickstarter, you could see this book in progress.
Yeah.
This book is in progress every day as we are maintaining awareness of the campaign and revealing new things. And I think that's one thing that's important, because when it comes to crowdfunding, what has developed is this fear that you will be investing in something that will not come to pass.
Right.
And
Well,
that is not the case here.
It's true, but one of the other things I want to point out to everybody, and that is different about this Kickstarter, is you'll see, if you go into Kickstarter, you look in the comics section, you'll see a lot of people who are just trying to get it printed, and they're doing their own kind of thing, and there's low goals. Your goal is significant, but it is significant for the most perfect reason. Everybody who's working on this is going to get paid what they should get paid. And
That's a fact.
That is, I think 75% of this lofty goal or more is going towards, paying the talent, which
That's right.
which is what we need to do in order to keep being able to do this. If people don't get paid, they can't keep doing it. So we need more of it.
Yep. Thank you for pointing that out. That is of highest importance. There's this strange relationship that people have with art, that they think it's magical on one end, but they want it to be cheap on another.
Well,
And
we all got to pay the rent.
Exactly.
So I get that.
we all have bills to pay.
So do the creators.
And they need to know their value, and there needs to be a larger conversation about creators knowing their value and how that impacts their careers going forward, and how we as an industry will respond to that. But yes, at the center of this operationally is that people have already been paid for what's been done so far, and what is to come, people will be paid for that.
I applaud you for that, as well as all the other stuff I mentioned. People gotta live. People gotta live.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to, before we go, I want to let everybody know that we are going to be back next week. We already have our guests. We have two guests. We have a Tuesday and a Thursday next week. On Tuesday, Tom Zoller is going to be on the show.
Nice guy.
We're going to talk about what he's been doing since he's last been on the show, which is a lot. We'll probably talk about how he's getting ready for San Diego as well. Hopefully, I know he has a Kickstarter that's in the works, and I'm hoping that it will have been launched by then, but if not, we won't. We'll talk about it. We also have Fred Van Lente and most likely Tom Fowler on Tuesday.
Oh,
Thursday.
Wow. Just all good guys.
They have a Kickstarter that's about to be launched. They are doing the comic book history of role-playing games.
That's awesome.
And
it's great.
They're both confirmed. And then we will be back following. So we are here. Thank you so much for being here, Joe. We
should do this again.
We will do it again. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. Thank you for finally, syncing up.
I have enjoyed these little sort of Zoom type sessions that you and I have been doing every couple of years. I'd like to be able to pick up on that more frequently.
Oh, definitely. Well, listen, thank you guys for having me. I love the interviews you've been doing. So when I got the invitation, I was like, okay, I've arrived. That's cool. And I'd love us to do a sequel, because I never get tired expressing my love for this amazing thing that we get to do, that is comics.
That's right. When is the book supposed to be coming out?
So the backers will get their books in early January, and we're figuring that in terms of the comic book retailers, they will get their books end of January.
I like that.
Well, that sounds like a good time to circle in another interview.
I'm sure there'll be.
Definitely.
I'm sure there's like probably 8 projects you've been working on between now and then that we can talk about.
Some of them will be revealed by the end of San Diego Comic-Con.
Excellent. So good. We will get back together. Have a great Comic-Con.
Thank you.
Stay tuned, everybody, to Joe's socials on this Sunday for even more news.
Yes.
Right.
And again, thank you for working with me through all these adjustments.
Absolutely. No worries. Thanks so much for being here.
We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Bob. Y'all have a good night.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Bye. You do. Bye.
And thank you folks out there in viewerland.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for everybody listening, watching. We will be back on Tuesday. We'll go over whatever happened in the news. We'll talk about some comics. We're going to have a great guest, and everybody else, stay tuned and have a great weekend. And we'll see you later.
Thanks for being here. Take it easy, folks.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?